Providing adequate evidence that EB-5 investment capital was legally obtained is one of the cornerstones of success in the Form I-526 petition process. United States Citizenship and Immigration Services, or USCIS, has set several requirements related to demonstrating the lawful sources of investment funds. The complexity and variety of sources of funds has turned this into an obstacle for many petitioners. To avoid delays in I-526 petition processing caused by requests for evidence, or RFEs, learn how source of funds documentation relates to the I-526 petition, what types of documentation USCIS accepts, and what level of proof is required. Proving the sources of funding in the I-526 petition. The purpose of the I-526 petition is to show USCIS that the investor is complying with the requirements of the EB-5 program and thus qualifies for an EB-5 visa. The source of funds is usually described in the cover letter that accompanies the Form I-526 petition, with the supporting documents included as exhibits to the letter. EB-5 investors can consider Form I-526 as a two-part petition. One part deals with the project documents, and the other with the investor's details, including proof of how the investment funds were obtained. For a successful application, both parts of the I-526 petition must adhere to USCIS standards. Failure to properly document the sources of funds will result in an RFE or even outright denial. Source of funds documentation and the level of proof required. USCIS sets out the source of funds requirements for EB-5 investors in its policy manual. The immigrant investor must demonstrate by a preponderance of the evidence that the capital invested or actively in the process of being invested in the new commercial enterprise was obtained through lawful means. In establishing that the capital was acquired through lawful means, the immigrant investor must provide evidence demonstrating the direct and indirect source of his or her investment capital. USCIS does not provide a specific list of documents EB-5 investors can use as proof of source of funds. It does, however, stipulate that the investor must prove the funds were obtained through lawful means by a preponderance of the evidence. Preponderance of the evidence is an evidentiary standard that means the burden of proof is met when the party with the burden convinces the fact finder that there is a greater than 50% chance that the claim is true. Therefore, if an EB-5 investor can prove with 51% certainty that funds were legally obtained, they meet the evidentiary standard required by USCIS. While no set of rules exist about EB-5 source of funds documentation, several case decisions provide further guidance on the documents to include with an I-526 petition. For example, in the USCIS Administrative Appeals Office's precedent decision, Matter of Ho, and the AAO noted that the petitioner must show that he was the legal owner of the invested capital. Bank statements and other financial documents do not meet this requirement if the documents show someone else as the legal owner of the capital. Furthermore, the petitioner must demonstrate that the invested capital was acquired through lawful means. Mere assertions about the petitioner's financial situation or work history without supporting documentary evidence are not sufficient to meet this requirement. The AAO made a similar finding in the 1998 Matter of Sofici, noting that a petitioner must present clear documentary evidence of the sources of the funds that he invests. In this case, the petitioner failed to adequately document the sources of funds. He claimed that the funds derived from the sale of a house and business, but he didn't provide documentation such as a sales contract or deed of ownership. According to the AAO, simply going on record without supporting documentary evidence is not sufficient for purposes of meeting the burden of proof. Documenting the path of EB-5 investment funds. Documenting the path of EB-5 investment capital is an important and often overlooked aspect of providing EB-5 source of funds documentation. The path of funds simply refers to the movement of EB-5 capital from its origins to the point of investment. That is, from the source of the moment the funds reach the escrow account or the NCE's business account. Documents to include as proof of the source and path of EB-5 investment funds. While the process to document the lawful source of funds is unique for each EB-5 investor, all investors should include their personal income tax returns for the previous 5 years if available. If tax returns are not available due to the particular tax system in their country of origin, investors should submit a declaration from a tax professional in their country of origin detailing the required information and explaining the lack of records. Additionally, they should include bank statements that show the deposit of the funds. Furthermore, according to the USCIS, the petitioner must provide evidence demonstrating the direct and indirect source of his or her investment capital. Thus, in the case of gifted funds, for example, the petitioner must prove that they received the amount as a lawful gift, which is the direct source of the capital, and that the gift giver obtained the funds in a lawful manner, which is the indirect source of the capital. Because of the vast array of sources of funds, the documents to include with an I-526 petition can vary substantially. EB-5 investors must also provide certified translations of non-English documents. Case study: documenting the source of funds in an I-526 petition. To help you better understand source of funds requirements, we provide a case study in which a U.S. business owner, Mr. Smith, makes a loan to an Indian EB-5 investor, Ms. Patel, against a real estate asset overseas. Ms. Patel is a 100% owner of a multi-family apartment building in Mumbai, India. Mr. Smith is the 100% owner of a digital consulting business in the U.S. Mr. Smith lends Ms. Patel $900,000 with the apartment building as collateral. The loan is in the form of a 10-year mortgage at a market interest rate. First, Ms. Patel must prove her identity by submitting copies of her birth certificate, passport, and driver's license. Next, she needs to prove that the asset exists, that she owns it, and that it is worth more than the loan amount. To do this, she can provide a copy of the title deed and evaluation certificate or letter. Additionally, Ms. Patel needs to prove how she came to own the asset. Therefore, she needs to submit evidence showing the source of the funds she used to buy the apartment building, such as income statements, tax documents, and proof of savings. If she inherited it, she needs to prove evidence such as a copy of the original owner's will and death certificate. The next step is to prove that the loan transaction is a formal market transaction. Ms. Patel should include copies of the loan agreement, personal guarantee, and note and evidence that the mortgage has been recorded in the public record. She must also show a clear path to foreclosure on the asset in case of default. Finally, the focus needs to shift to the lender, Mr. Smith. First, Ms. Patel must provide evidence that Mr. Smith exists by including a copy of his passport, birth certificate, and driver's license. Next, she needs to show that Mr. Smith's business exists and that it is a legal business by providing a copy of the business incorporation documents, FEIN, and operating agreement. Finally, she must show that the loan funds were legally earned from third parties for services provided and that all taxes have been paid on the income. To do this, she can provide copies of invoices for services provided, annotated bank statements, Form 1040 returns, and state tax returns if applicable. As the case study shows, proving that investment funds were legally obtained can be complex, as the investor needs to account for all funds associated with the capital. Working with an experienced EB-5 practitioner can vastly simplify the process of documenting the sources of EB-5 investment funds. To learn more about the EB-5 program and the I-526 petition, contact EB-5 Affiliate Network today.